Hello, time for the press preview then. A first look at what is on the front pages. It's time to check out what is making the headlines tonight with the columnist Carole Malone and the editor of the Courier in Dundee, David Clegg. They're going to be with us from now until just before midnight. A very good evening to both of you. Chat in a moment. First of all, let's check out those front pages for you, starting with the Metro. It calls the seizure of a British trawler by French maritime officials a kick in the scallops, as heated negotiations continue between the two nations over post-Brexit fishing rights. And the Star has an almost identical headline, though the Telegraph plays it straight, declaring Johnson summons French ambassador over fish row. Here's the Eye, carries analysis from an independent think tank which suggests low and middle income households will be left worse off by yesterday's budget. It also means an increase in mortgages as well as tax bills, that's according to The Times. Tensions ahead of the COP26 climate summit are the main concern for the FT's international edition. The world's two biggest polluters, China and India, have of course refused to commit to abiding by global emissions standards. David's paper, The Courier, speaks to St Andrews University student Keona Fazil, whose drink was spiked at a recent party, which, as we know, has been a growing problem, hasn't it, of late. The Express hears that e-cigarettes could soon be made available on the NHS to help people quit. Tomorrow's Mail says that would make the UK the first country in the world to offer e-cigarettes on prescription. Same story actually on the front of The Guardian. And The Sun says the girlfriend of footballer Cristiano Ronaldo is pregnant with twins. Nice news to end on, and we're joined tonight by Carole Malone and David Clegg. Good to see you. Lots in the papers, lots of different front pages, actually, but many of them are going with this row over fishing and a row that is escalating, Carole.
Yeah, this is weird because a couple of weeks ago it looked like it was all going quite well. The sausage war looked like it was ending after EU said that they would waive checks on 80% of goods that were coming over. So chilled meat, and we were going to be allowed to put things from here to Northern Ireland. But it's all kind of blown up again with the seizure of this trawler. I think it's the Cornelius, I don't know how to say it. It's kind of outrageous, really. Macron, for weeks now, he's been threatening this country. He's been saying he's going to block the Channel Tunnel. He's going to block our ports. He basically wants to stop us trading because he can't accept the fact that Brexit has happened. And now they've upped the temperature by taking this boat, which they say doesn't have a licence, but the owner of the boat says it absolutely does have a licence. And I don't quite see what Macron's problem is here. It's all about the fishing licences. France are saying that they want more fishing licences granted. But actually, Lord Frost has actually said that Britain has granted 98% of all the licence applications from the EU, and they are looking favourably on the rest of them. So I don't quite know what Macron wants. I suspect it's to do with the fact that he has an election coming up in the next few months, and this is him just posturing and looking like the big I am, because a lot of the French fishermen are on in Le Pen's camp, so he wants to make them feel that he's looking after them.
David, it'd be good to get your view on this from your part of the world. Your sister paper, the Press and Journal, running it on its front page, Scott's firm's boat caught in the eye of the fishing storm. I mean, what's the view on the ground where you are?
Yeah, I think people are very concerned. Obviously, this was a big issue in the Brexit debate. A lot of fishermen in Scotland voted for Brexit because they were concerned about fishing quotas and that the long rehearsed problems with the EU and how that all worked. There's been a long process to this point, and I think one of the things I've sensed a little bit is opponents of Brexit are perhaps coming at this at the wrong way, because I think the French have been acting very unreasonably here. As Carole said, I think it's 98% of these French fishing boats which had to show some history or record of having fished in UK waters previously have been able to do so. And the French response to the problems that the 2% are having has been, very aggressive. In fact, and there's problems with this in Jersey as well. And they've been threatening to shut off electricity to Jersey, which seems like a quite incredible threat for the French government to be making. So fishermen are very concerned about it in Scotland. The Press and Journal's been covering this issue widely, as you say, and this is about people's livelihoods. It's about their jobs. This shouldn't be about some kind of political retaliation. This shouldn't be a hangover of ill feeling or resentment about Brexit. There is an agreed process for how these types of issues should be dealt with. So I think the Scottish Fishermen's Federation, which has been talking about this issue on this channel earlier on today, I saw they're very concerned about this as well. They would really hope that calm heads prevail and that the French take a slightly less intense attitude towards trying to resolve these technical difficulties.
Yeah, interesting you say calm heads should prevail. Some of the language is interesting. Front of the Metro, kick in the scallops. It's similar on the front of the Daily Star. And I note in the Metro, Carole, that Andrew Bridgen, backbench Tory MP, of course, has said history shows our great nation's interests are best served by standing up to threats of little Napoleons clinging on to power. I mean, that sort of language isn't helpful, is it?
Well, you see, it's not helpful, but it's kind of, with Macron, it's kind of true. The guy is posturing. As David just said, his language has been appalling over the past few weeks, as has his, what she's called the French Seas Minister, Annick Girardin. She was the one who threatened Jersey in the first place, threatened to cut off the energy altogether, and today it's risen its head again, and they're now threatening to put higher tariffs on the energy. France is actually making this into something it needn't be, and unless we stand up to them, they're going to carry on doing it. And it looks like we are standing up to them, because Lord Frost has now called together the XO Cabinet Committee to talk about starting the Article 16 process. He has said to them it's always been on the table, and he doesn't want to do it, but unless we get some kind of agreement, he doesn't see another option. And now he's called together this meeting. They're going to have meetings in the next few days. He summoned the French ambassador. So we have to act against the French threats. The language that Bridgen used maybe isn't the right language, but we can't let the French threaten us the way they are doing.
Yeah, David,
there's rarely been a situation that Andrew Bridgen hasn't made worse, I think. And just because if we think the French are behaving erratically or the way they're approaching it has not been appropriate, I think that reciprocating that type of attitude is not going to be beneficial here. I think what the fishermen in Scotland and this part of the world want is for both governments of both countries to come together, sort this problem out. It's a small issue affecting a small number of boats. It's largely about paperwork and technical processes. So let's get it fixed so people can get back to their livelihoods, because fishing is a very dangerous occupation. It's dangerous enough without having talk of blockades and boats being boarded in the middle of the night and all this nonsense. I think it really needs to get resolved pretty quickly.
These talks can't go on forever. I think Lord Frost has been incredibly patient. He's had to put up with a lot of abuse from the French, but the talks can't go on forever. They can't be indefinite. So something has to give. Something's got to be done.
OK, let's leave that there for the moment and move on to another story. It's on page 4 of the Metro. This is all about Angela Rayner apologising unreservedly for those comments where she called the Conservatives Tory scum. Carole, do you want to lead us off on this one? I mean, she absolutely refused to apologise at the time, didn't she?
Do you know what? This woman is actually incredible. This is way too little, too late. She's been asked to apologise for weeks and weeks now. I think the Tory conference the Labour conference was about a month ago when she said all this. And let's get it right. She called Tories scum, homophobes, misogynists and racist. And she was asked time and again to apologise, and she didn't. But what has really angered me today is where she says, and there's a print of her apologies now. She said, "I send my heartfelt condolences to the family of Sir David Amess. He was a fine parliamentarian, a proud advocate for his constituents." How dare she piggyback on Sir David Amess's murder? This is the woman who just 4 weeks ago said all Tories were scum and misogynists. And here she is praising a man who was murdered. And to me, this is just, I suspect she's been told she has to apologise.
Well, she says in her, I mean, it's a long statement, isn't it? She said that she's had a period of time out. She says she's been grieving personally herself. David, do you agree with Carole?
No, I don't. I think I would have more sympathy for Angela Rayner, really. It's clear her comments were unacceptable. I think, obviously, with the events of recent weeks, she's had time to reflect on that, reflect on the example that politicians should set with their rhetoric. In some way, there's some similarities to what we were discussing about the fishing situation. Carole's definitely right that she'd been unrepentant at the time, that she had in fact doubled down on it at the Labour Party conference afterwards, I think. But she's clearly had an unsettling time with her own troubles, which have been in court about offensive emails or threatening emails that have been sent to her. She's seen the horrible murder of a MP colleague and the devastation that has caused. And I think that it is a lengthy statement. I thought it was quite a thoughtful statement. And I think that if someone makes an apology like that, if they express themselves at that length, say their previous conduct is not being acceptable and they wouldn't conduct themselves in that way in the future, my instinct would be to draw a line under it.
Carole, you're itching to come back. We're out of time. 10 seconds.
Okay. I think this was politically expedient. She saw the fuss on Twitter last week about using this kind of language, and she's either decided or been told to retract it for her own political future.
OK, all right, we'll leave that one there. Thank you both for the moment. Coming up, why one analysis of the budget says low and middle income households will be worse off. That's after the break. Welcome back, part two of the press preview. David and Carole still with us, and we'll take a look at the front of the eye. David, all the analysis the day after the budget. Return of the squeezed middle. This is the Institute for Fiscal Studies saying low and middle income households are the ones that are going to face real pain.
Yes, it's interesting because the story in some newspapers this morning, I should say, about the budget, where this was a budget of handouts. I saw Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, compared to Gordon Brown in some commentary. And I think the thing that they've got very much wrong there is that while this has certainly been a spending spree, the way that the spending is being targeted under this government is very different than it was targeted under the new Labour government when Gordon Brown was Chancellor, because it redistributed wealth from the rich to the poor, whereas that is not happening in this, as the IFS showed today, in quite stark analysis, really, that there's going to be a real decline in living standards for middle income earners. The tax rises, which I think I'm right in saying it's the tax rises since 1993, we're going to be at the highest rate of tax, but they're not being targeted at the well-off. The distribution of it is actually going to benefit the better off and cause real problems. And in fact, real pain is the phrase that the IFS used today for people with less wealth.
Yeah, high inflation, rising taxes, poor growth, all on the way, Carole. But interestingly, a Sky News poll said that 39% of people we spoke to approved of the budget yesterday, thought it was a good budget, 21% disapproved. So it would appear that actually maybe many people think that things will be better for them.
You know, whatever Rishi Sunak did yesterday, there'd be lots of people saying it's not the right thing to do. I just read today he's been accused of just promoting this, of showing off, and this is brand Rishi. What nonsense! You know, the guy has guided us through COVID. He kept thousands, millions of people in work with the furlough schemes. You know, he was giving them 80% of their salaries. This budget it's tax and spend. It's been a tsunami of spending. 150 million quid on schools, public transport, housing, working families. You know, David says it's been hit. There's nothing for the poor. Yes, there is. The minimum wage has been increased by 6.6%, and we know that universal credit is going to go. It's not going to go up, but the tapering scheme is going to mean that the people who are working get a lot more money every week. So there is something in it for the poor. It's not fair to say. Yes, low incomes are going to feel real pain because we're in a cost of living crisis, and we can't get away from that. And the public sector rises, they say it won't be above inflation, but it will be an inflation-proofing rise, which will mean that the rises they get will be even up. But the private sector has got no rises at all to help them with with what's coming.
Well,
So
let's have just before we go, let's have a quick look at the take of the business section of the Daily Telegraph. David, it's saying the IFS also reporting that the Chancellor is using COVID as an excuse for, as Carole says, that spending tsunami.
Yes, indeed. And I think obviously COVID has a lot of challenges, and in fairness to the Chancellor, a lot of this money is going to be directed to the health service, which has not only the COVID challenges, but also the backlog that we're all aware of that has built up while the health service has been dealing with coronavirus for the last 18 months. So in some way that is justified.